Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach Podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today I'm going to be doing one of the toughest things a podcaster has to do, which is interview another podcaster. Because it is so easy for both of us to start taking control of the entire conversation and going ahead with it. Today's podcast is about happiness. Okay, so we have Varun Duggirala with us, and we're going to talk about his journey of understanding happiness and this current trip that he's on mental fitness. So very exciting. Varun, welcome to the Habit Coach Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk about happiness. How else do I put it?
Varun, tell us a little bit about yourself. How do you get into podcasting? What is it that you're doing right now?
So I'll do a quick flashback. I've done this long-winded route to come to Bombay and do what I do now. Grew up in a small town, coastal Andhra Pradesh. Half my family are engineers, half of them are doctors. I decided to go the engineer route and regretted that.
I think every engineer does that.
Eventually finished a 4-year degree over 6 years. Did lots of like random odd things in between, including working in call centers, being like a promoter for a liquor brand, did all that stuff. Ended up in media school.
Promoter for a liquor brand?
Yeah, I sold Jack Daniel whiskey in bars in Bangalore. Great job. They paid me so well. Imagine you're in college, final year of college. You get paid $1,000 an hour for 3 hours of work a day in a bar.
In a bar. What else do you need?
And no targets. Literally. Go to someone, say, I give you 2 dice. You get a 3, 4 or a 7. You win something.
Fantastic.
But only thing is you have to order one Jack Daniels.
Huh.
All the gifts were cheaper than the actual drink of Jack Daniels. But people still bought it.
And as the night progressed, business became better.
Yeah, and the thing is, once you finish those 3 hours, you could literally just go, change, and come back in because you knew the bouncer, you knew the bartender, you knew everybody there. You'd get stuff for like cheaper or free. Best job. I did it for like, I think, a good 3 to 6 months towards the end of college. I would say the least pressure I've ever felt in a job was that job.
Love it. Okay, so
I ended up in Pune studying filmmaking and started off working at MTV and Channel V, did reality TV, did a bunch of that stuff. Eventually started my own company called The Glitch back in 2009. Me and my best friend from film school, Rohit, we started that off as a 2-person thing out of an apartment. Grew that over the last like 14 years into one of India's largest creative agencies. We got acquired in 2018, so that kind of helped a lot of stuff in life. And around that time, I started hosting a podcast called Advertising is Dead. It's been 4 years now since the show's been going on.
Have you always wanted to do podcasting?
No, I actually never saw myself as someone behind a mic. I did try to be someone in front of the camera, all honesty. I have done random ads. I've been that background person when Cyrus is hosting something, that those extra intern jobs you get at MTV where you are that one guy holding a beach ball in the background for no apparent reason.
You didn't take part in any reality shows?
He's actually, I've shot stuff with Cyrus where Cyrus is in a bar and I'm one random guy on the table behind him in a bar and did none of the reality shows, but I shot a bunch of that stuff.
Okay.
But I always thought my voice didn't have like a audio thing to it.
Isn't it the scariest thing when you come and listen to your voice?
Yeah, and I'm like, this sounds different. Yeah, because I was always, I mumbled a lot. I speak really quickly, so people wouldn't understand what I was saying. So it took me some time to kind of calibrate that part of it out. But this kind of happened as a coincidence. I came literally to IVM to be a guest on the pilot of another show called the Filter Coffee Podcast.
Okay.
And I spoke to Amit and Kavita, and then I ended up coming on Simplified as a guest. And they just said, do you want to host a podcast? And I said, okay, what could it be about? And I'd been in this whole advertising industry without being from the advertising industry. So I said, I can talk about how it's like, how things are really changing in that space. So it went from just advertising and marketing now to business and startups and everything else over the last like 4 years. And then somewhere around, I also started hosting another podcast for IVM called Think Fast, which is again on business. But I'd say the last 3 years for me has also been about really discovering the other side of my interest, right? Which is really like, it started off with my interest in fitness. Generally been passionate about fitness for the last 4 or 5 years. Have been longer, but I think the true passion has been the last 3-4 years. And that kind of moved me towards just like the mind as well. So you're physically fit, how can you be mentally fit as well? And then went down multiple rabbit holes, which is my favorite thing to do. And then now it's become like, I think the biggest passion point in my life is to really focus on understanding mental fitness as a topic and kind of doing more and more about it. I just started doing a course out of Harvard on happiness, which for me has been like mind blowing. That first of all, there is a course on happiness,
Brilliant.
and I realized that there were multiple institutes across the world and specialists who specialize on happiness. Right? No prizes for guessing that the World Happiness Institute is in Copenhagen. Like
World's happiest place.
World's happiest place. So that is obviously like a no-brainer. But it's really been interesting understanding stuff in this space, social sciences, stuff like this. But I think I'm in like day zero. But there's so much to learn.
Where did this change suddenly take place? Was there like a pivotal moment? Did you suddenly have a epiphany during the lockdown? This is around the lockdown, right? That mental fitness and all of that took over.
So I said till 2019, I was pretty much on the standard corporate path, right? You've built and sold a company, you're in a larger ecosystem, spent about good 4 years with WPP, by then about 3-4 years in. And I kind of was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do in life. And I'd had I have a daughter, like great marriage, all that stuff is sorted, right? But at some point, from a professional standpoint, I always kept looking for more things to do. The podcast was a great way for me to kind of channel that out, right? So that became it. But I always would try to find ways to talk about stuff which have always interested me, right? So it started off with like can I do more about music, more about pop culture? But my music and pop culture stuff are never about the actual end product, although I enjoy those as well. It's about how that kind of came to be, right? If you talk to artists and how they come up with things and how their process works, there's so much in the mind. And there's so much in that entire, like, I'd say following the breadcrumbs of curiosity. So it started off with that.
And I think, just to build on that people don't realize that creativity is actually a system.
Yeah.
Right? They think that creativity is just like a spark will suddenly happen. No, they actually have systems in the way that they get creative.
One of my favorite examples of a system, because you mentioned that, is so Quentin Tarantino was on the Joe Rogan podcast, right? One of my favorite episodes in recent times, because also Quentin can talk and he's got
so many stories. He's got so many stories.
So he spoke about how he shifted his daily schedule. He said he used to always be that guy who would go to a bar in the evening. He would sleep through the morning, wake up by late afternoon, go to a bar in the evening, start writing in the bar till early in the morning, come back home and crash.
Wow.
But as he got married and he was, they think of having a kid, all that stuff, he said, I want to be awake when the world is. So he decided to shift that around. And I love his schedule. I think if I have to ever say that, if there's a schedule I want to kind of like come to in life, it's that. He wakes up in the morning, not too early, like I think 10, 11 is when he wakes up, 10-ish. And he gets in to write by about noon. He writes till about 5 and gets out. He has a float on his pool in his house. He's lying there. He runs through. He kind of thinks about everything he wrote that day, and by later in the evening goes for dinner, comes back home and sleeps. And he says that he said he's been so much more, for lack of a better term, productive and a lot more in tune with the world around him because of this shift than he was when he was doing that. Because he always assumed, right, an artist is going to be drunk in the bar at night or going for long walks. He's like, no, this system of like lying in the pool after my writing, let me like kind of soak in everything which I've written.
Yeah.
I thought that's damn curious.
It's that active thinking and the passive thinking time. It's why all our best ideas come from the toilet. Like when we're sitting
toilet,
having a bath, shower,
washing dishes.
Washing dishes is an interesting one.
Yeah. It's that whole like. So this is something which I remember reading, right, is that it's the whole prefrontal cortex piece. When you are not focusing your mind on what you have to do, and trying to put control over there, you're opening up your subconscious to think. So you know how to wash dishes. It's a mundane thing, right? It's like why they say people should go for a walk when you want to come up with ideas. Your body doesn't need to control you as much, or doesn't have to give you direction as much to do what you have to do, because it's also like muscle memory. You can do that stuff. And that's when you kind of open up and ideas kind of pop out. So you need to find your, like, I love washing dishes.
I find washing dishes from a cleaning point of view, like mentally cleaning point of view. So I'm saying, my sins are being washed away.
Don't give me jadu, give me dishes, I'm always happy.
Yeah, don't give me jadu.
Oh my God.
No, but jadu will be perfect for your physical fitness also, na? You can do like abs, crunches.
I had friends who were trying to do like squat Jadu, early pandemic, and they thought it's a cool workout. The cool workout thought for them lasted 2 days.
2 days,
And then they were like, let's get that.
And then
Everybody got
pocha.
the Roomba or whatever that thing they could get.
Those are brilliant.
Yeah.
Ours
I
is
named
called Basanti.
mine's Ramlal.
So we actually got
Close enough.
Close enough. So Basanti comes home and we call her Basanti, and then the person who's the house help looks in, "Magar Basanti मेरा बहन का नाम है." And we're like, "Oh, अच्छा Basanti नहीं रख सकते." It's too cute. Yep. So during the pandemic, you were going through this.
And I've realized that I learn a lot through listening. And I feel one of the first sparks was I was just trying to find stuff I was doing this podcast called Useless Information, which was a early pandemic.
How many podcasts are you doing?
Too many. So Useless has been like...
How you keep track of it? You have an Excel sheet?
No. I as of today do 3 podcasts
Okay.
a week. One called Take a Pause, which I do entirely as a passion project on my end. And the other 2 which are like your business ones with IVM. And Useless was a early pandemic experiment. Because I'm like, I'm sitting at home. I can't just talk about business. So I just pinged like 8 people and I said, I just want to I'll call you on Zoom. We'll talk for an hour about stuff which you don't get a chance to talk about. So Rohan kind of came on, Joshi, and he and I spoke about we both love movie soundtracks. So movie soundtracks, that side of pop culture for about an hour. Saurabh Pant came on and spoke about cricket because he's passionate about cricket. You don't know that much, that part of him. Gaurav Kapoor spoke about paparazzi. Jose came in and spoke about the things Jose speaks about, which is a lot of random things. And Pooja Dhingra came on and spoke about her yearly challenges and stuff. So it was just a fun thing to do. But at some point, work started picking up again after the first 2 months. And then I'm like, okay, I can't do this finding guests and doing... Because I was editing it also myself. I was trying to do this whole process of editing a podcast, which I no longer do.
Thank God.
So I said, let me just put bite-sized things I'm learning. So I started doing these short episodes of stuff I'm learning, and that just became the flow. That eventually became the podcast that is Take a Pause. And I realized that the things that interested me were things that were connected to the mind. So I think one of my earliest ones that really sparked interest was something on this concept of VARK, right? Is that how human beings learn. If you go to school, you traditionally always get a book, right? But VARK basically says that human beings can learn as visual, audio, reading, case kinesthetic. So you need to kind of feel it to learn.
Touch it, yeah.
And we're all like a balance of all 4. But in school, you taught with a book. So I'm like, one second, I started listening to podcasts and I learned so much more with audio. So I kept listening to more and more, and I found a bunch of podcasts which I learned a lot from. And I would always go to podcasts with interesting guests. So then I'd find their books and I would read it. And then I would listen to where else have they gone on another podcast and who else is there.
And their rabbit holes.
And I suddenly became this person who had like 20-30 books. And I was reading them and listening to these.
But all around mindset, or they were what kind of books?
Everything from... It started off with me trying to understand creativity. Because I never considered myself a creative person till I was 36. And I'm almost 40. So the last 4 years has been like, wait a second, I can actually be creative. Because I always thought I was a bit of like a half fraud with creativity, because all my creative ideas were reference based. Like I'd have references for everything, even like early days of my career.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On A Sip of Finance, Priyanka doles out tips on how to choose the right mutual funds. On The Wire Talks, Siddharth talks to Apar Gupta, Executive Director of Indian Freedom Foundation, on the need for a law to protect personal data. On Ikaduka Economy, Abhinav talks to Vikram Limse, CEO of Helicon Consulting. The duo discusses the impact of economic recession on our lives. On Think Fast, Varun and Sushita give their take on TikTok venturing into music and what that means for its counterparts. And on A Niche Thing, Anish talks to the founders of Plant People, Komal Garg and Angus Bhalla, on how to select the right indoor plants. Once again, would like to remind you all about our merch. There's some amazing stuff out there. Please go to our website, ivmpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab and do check out what's available there. I'm sure you'll find something you like. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And also, I'd like to remind you all to please tell a friend about this show if you're enjoying it. It will give you somebody to talk to the show about. Yeah, it really does help us too, so that too. Also, please rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on, and you can check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website which basically lists all our YouTube channels. Please go check that out. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Boat Lifestyle, Small Case, and Intel vPro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Just steal like an artist.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's one of the first books I read. I'm like, okay, 1 second. I can be. Maybe this is my form of creativity, right? So creativity then let me. So I did the standard Austin Kleon and Elizabeth Gilbert has a great book called Big Magic and a few others. And then I came across this person called Rich Roll. And Rich Roll, I think in many ways kind of changed how I looked at performing from a fitness and a mental standpoint. He has a super interesting story. The guy was en route to being on the Olympic swimming team for the US at one point of time, like almost like probables. Gets to college, discovers alcohol, becomes a raging alcoholic, screws up his entire sports career, goes to rehab, stops drinking, becomes a lawyer in the LA entertainment space, but he supplements alcohol with food. So really unhealthy eating habits, right? Like your beef burgers every day, all that stuff. Gets married, has a happy marriage. At 40, he walks up the stairs and almost like feels like he's going to get a heart attack. At 40. And only because of his health. And decides to, okay, I will go extreme, becomes plant-based, starts cycling and running every day, and goes the other extreme and says, I want to run an ultra marathon. Because Ironman was packed. You didn't get you have to find those slots, right? You have to book it pre.
Correct.
Ultraman, nobody books beforehand.
Who wants to run 100 kilometers? Yeah.
And there are running, swimming, and cycling, right? It's
Ultra is everything.
everything.
Oh, so it's not ultra marathon. It's an ultra Ironman.
It's like it's called an Ultraman.
Okay.
Which is basically more hardcore than an Ironman.
Nonsense. My God.
And it only happens from at least from his book. Happens in Hawaii. And and it's not like it's a publicly shown thing. It just happens. Like you can do whatever you want. So he does an Ultraman at 41, finishes it. At 42 or 43, he decides to do 5 ultramarathons back to back.
Wow.
Ultramans. So he and another guy tried to 1 day, 5 days, 5 Ultramans. Eventually finished it, I think, in 6 to 7 days because the travel from island to island took them longer. So his book was entirely on that, like his journey and eventually it ended up to him starting a podcast called the Rich Roll Podcast. Where he's been doing this, I think, for like hundreds and hundreds of episodes. But his conversations aren't just with athletes, but they're also people who are talking about the mind. And most of the conversations with athletes are about their mindset. It's not about the physicality, because the physicality is a part of it.
Correct.
But really, the athlete's mindset is super fascinating because you're pushing your body to the limit. And you can only do that if your mind's in a certain place, right?
That is where it's
and that way my bulb went off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I always want to be this fit person. And I'd parallelly had this incident about 5 years ago when my daughter was born, when I was reasonably more buff than I am now. Because I always I want to be gym bro, so get muscles and all that stuff. But I'd get tired carrying a baby around. Because arms would start getting tired. Because your arms were only aesthetic. They were not functional.
And your arms were so heavy in any case.
Yeah. And my wife Pooja was like, what is the point of these biceps you're building? You can't even carry a newborn, literally 3-month-old baby. So, and my switch towards functional fitness happened around the time this whole stuff had started as well. And so I said, these things align. So pushing myself physically became a thing. Learning about my mind became another thing. And they've all kind of converged into what I'm most passionate about today, which is all this stuff.
You're not getting into marathon running.
I have hated running for a long time. Only in the last 8 months, since I changed coaches, have I actually started to enjoy running. I was in London a couple of months ago, and on my last morning, and I went for a few runs because my wife Pooja loves to run. She was, and we found this place outskirts of London in the countryside, and she would go run every day, and I ran with her once or twice. But on the last morning, I woke up and everyone's sleeping because I woke up 6 a.m. I'm like, go try run. And we were very close to Hyde Park. I'm like, I want to do this thing once. It's one of those things you want to do.
Yeah, run in Hyde Park.
I ran 8 kilometers without breaking a sweat. Also, the weather was amazing. But I enjoyed myself. Because, running and I could see, there were swans and geese waking up. And there was, one random drunk uncle who spoke to me while I was going. But there was so much that happened. 8 kilometers, and I enjoyed it. And so now it's become okay, I'm enjoying this. I want to figure how much more of this I can do. Because one thing which I learned over the last year was that as long as I focus on running better, lifting better, and jumping better, that's all the physical movements you need to focus on. You're not getting into I'm not doing aesthetic work. I'm doing more functional in that sense. So Yeah, I enjoy running as well. But I don't know if I'll do a marathon. I might. I'm not going to say no to anything right now.
Okay, fine, fair. Wait, no, I was about to say like we've lost another one to this whole marathon craze, and like no.
No. I don't think I want to just do a marathon. I would. Like, would I do an Ironman? I would. In my head, I'm thinking about it.
Huh.
I'm terrible. I'm not the best swimmer. I've been swimming for a long time, but I just get like my.
But you don't mind those hours of practice and stuff like that? For me, it's just that much amount of quantum of training, the amount of training that will happen for that. Like, I would much rather do other things in my life than.
If I could, and if I pushed myself, I would actually do a lot more CrossFit.
Yeah.
And if you look at CrossFit, it's also involves running. So I won't just do a marathon. I think that what you mean is the monotony of it.
The monotony
right?
of
I
it.
enjoy running as almost a meditative process. For me, that weekly run which I do midweek every week, that's like just like
So you've reached that stage where it is meditative in
just
nature.
zone it out and stuff like that.
So how is all of this now jumping into the mental fitness part? So then what steps did you take for the mental fitness aspect?
So I kind of broke it down the way I see it, and I'm continuing to learn about it, is that for you to be mentally fit, you're looking for a few things. You're trying to figure a way to have a lot more clarity in your mind, right? How do you focus better, all that stuff. You're trying to figure how you can perform better in life. So, and performance goes in multiple directions. It talks about balance, it talks about all that stuff. And while motivation is a very overused term, I feel in many ways what you're trying to really figure out is what do I kind of want to direct my energies towards? Because oftentimes what we feel in our heads is that, okay, like if you don't want to do something, you want to stay static, like, oh, I'm overthinking something, or you're like, oh, you're trying to come up with the reasons why you don't want to do it, is because you lack motivation to do it. So instead of saying, why do I lack the motivation, what you should ask yourself is, what is wrong with the thing you're going to do that is making you... I think we go after the emotion.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily go after what is triggering the emotion.
We self-flagellate. We say it's our fault.
Yeah.
It's not about the other thing.
And I feel there is so much in this space, and I don't know, I think it's been the last few years, but people are also a lot more interested with it. There are also people sharing stuff about it. Like, I had this fascinating conversation, there's this author called Meredith Arthur. Meredith works at Pinterest, and she wrote a book called Get Out of My Head. It's a book for overthinkers. And so I took a piece from a book and I'd shared it on Twitter, and I tagged her and said, really resonated with me. And she liked it, and she messaged me saying, thanks for sharing something from my book. And I jumped at it and said, do you want to come on a podcast?
Nice.
She said, let's do it this week. So we had a chat. And while talking to her, she said something very interesting. She said that if we all have things in our mind, right? We are either an overthinker, or you might call yourself a procrastinator, you call yourself many things.
The labels that we put on.
The more you find people like you, you find your tribe. And she said, you're like my people. She said, when you messaged me, I knew you were one of my people.
So sweet.
And so if you look at it in that sense, we all feel it.
Yeah.
You're not like the only person feeling this, right? And that is the whole thing. And the more I think back on why I went down this journey, I feel there is a lot of professional success you get as you go through the regular routes of things. And I've thankfully gotten a reasonable amount of it before my 40s, right? I'm like, is that going to deeply satisfy me as a human being? Maybe not. I'm very happy and have the privilege of having financial sorted and families in a great place, all that stuff. But as an individual, no amount of professional success can drive almost like mental clarity and, just like happiness. And that's where this whole thing kind of like blew up in my mind. I think 2020 and 21 were years where I spent a lot of time doing this, but also like working with professionals, right? I still do work with a professional coach. I do therapy, thankfully, as my therapist tells it, is as SOSs. So I do it in like, okay, I really need this. Next 1 month I'll do weekly, then I'll phase it to like twice a month, and eventually once a month, and then eventually not even doing it. But that's actually really helped, because talking to people who are experts is so important, because you will get a lot of, this is how you stay motivated in this world, which is I think one of the bigger problems. It's very surface level, but you go deeper and you understand what triggers these emotions in us. That emotions aren't bad, not something to be suppressed. There's so much more you can learn.
Absolutely. If I had to rename this podcast, I'd probably call it Motivation is Dead. So like,
Yeah.
so the
Because it's unfortunate, right? Motivation is such an important thing, but we've made it a catchphrase.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm forgetting who said this. There's this, I'm forgetting her name. She's the chief trainer at Peloton. I can't recall her name right now. And she had a masterclass on the masterclass platform. And she said that hustle isn't bad. The problem with hustle is that we take the wrong things from it. So it's a hustle culture.
correct.
It doesn't mean you work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It means that hustle is jugaad. We've forgotten that hustle is jugaad. Jugaad also means I'm figuring a way to sleep every night properly and still get all my stuff done. It's not this,
Go hard, go home, kill it every day.
I wish there were 27 hours in a day. No.
Correct. Yeah.
24 bahut hai.
I like that. Hustle is jugaad. Technically it
Yeah,
is.
it
I
is.
hustled
That
this
is
in.
the
I
exact
jugaaded this in.
definition.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are we suddenly making this? And we're all guilty, right? Like I was guilty of this. I remember my early internships at MTV. I would be in the office for 10, 15 days and suddenly somebody would come saying, once again, why are you still wearing the same, or like, no, not same clothes. I had a cabinet and there was a shower there. So thankfully I was clean. Saying, have you not gone home? I'm like, no. Saying, go home now. Don't come back for 3 days. So thankfully I had people like that around
Correct.
me. But we've all done that, right? Work till 2, 3, 4
Yeah.
a.m. But you realize how much sleep can really help you perform better.
Yeah.
Like I don't drink caffeine after 4 p.m. Although I've been told it should be 2 p.m., but that's too much.
No, 4 is fine.
Yeah.
No, 6 hours. No?
Yeah,
So-
because then I can sleep properly. Don't look at screens before I go to bed. As soon as I wake up, most days I succumb to it very often. Just because you want your mind to kind of have a cool down and a warm up. Again, like very, very like physical fitness analogies, but they're exactly what your mind needs.
Your mind is the same thing.
So
yeah.
I've been experimenting with all these things on myself. Like on the other end, I'm like plant protein versus whey protein. On the other side, I'm like, okay, sleep and all that stuff.
But like, have you been focusing on supplements for the brain, supplements for the mind, nootropics? And have you been looking into that kind of stuff as well?
I haven't fully gone into that space because I'm still a little iffy about what. I also come from like family of doctors. I've always been told to question all forms of science till a actual practitioner tells me to. I think that's like ingrained in my head.
Yeah, but doctors will never know about this. They will, because it's not
My
about
dad will send him a
illnesses,
long slap from far away.
Thappad.
But thappad will come. Because in his words, don't go listen to Dr. Google, is what my dad says all the time. But like trying to see if ashwagandha really helps. I don't know if it does. I've tried it. I still have an ashwagandha tab in the morning. I'm guessing it helps other things as well, so I do that.
It'll be for sleep and other
I've also had
stress.
friends tell me who are doctors saying, that that's literally expensive pee you're generating. Is what
Those
I've
are
also-
mainly multivitamins, but
Yeah.
like you need to focus on the stuff that is really like charging your brain. Like
Yeah.
Brahmi, for example, is damn good.
Yeah.
All your fish oils are fantastic. Lion's mane mushrooms.
So fish oil is great for the joint, right? So I've always had like a knee thing because I have this very weird leg structure where my knees are hyper flexible, so they actually bend backwards.
Ouch.
So I have to be careful about that, especially with doing squats and all that stuff. And I have flat feet. So my knee joints have always had like slight issues. So
Be doing hamstring training and stuff.
yeah,
like
I
that.
do all of that, and the fish oil has really helped. The fish oil has really helped that entire knee part to kind of
Nice.
have that piece. So some of that has helped. And I'm just thinking, what else have been trying in recent times? Not as much of that. I mean, I've gone the more biotin gummies and your all that stuff, and apple cider vinegar and stuff like that. But I haven't actually gone as far into trying stuff for the mind. All the warm lime water in the morning seems to be a very interesting thing, which I'm really enjoying.
That'll be gut cleansing.
Gut
so that will
cleansing,
help the
but also
mind.
I feel for the mind. It's like
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
sharp, like lemony taste in the morning.
wakes you up.
I'm so awake. Like you cannot not wake up with a full lemon with warm water.
When's your first coffee?
Wake up around 6 a.m. School days.
Oh, you go to school.
I have to drop. I have
I
to
know.
drop the 5-year-old to school. So 6 a.m. I wake her up by 6:30. So I have half an hour in the morning, which is generally spent cleaning pee and poop for the dogs. and the lime water. And my first coffee is around, I'd say 8.
Okay, fair. So you
8.
have like 2 hours gap from waking up to having.
So 8-ish, and I generally only have an espresso. I only drink black, so I'll have like a single shot of espresso, and then my second coffee is around 4.
Nice.
Mm.
Perfect.
But I do all this kada and all that stuff in the day, which I really like.
Especially
the
during the
non-caffeine.
lockdown, all of this started, right?
All lockdown, though, I went like deep into the coffee space, and I think the only thing I've had to really struggle with is not have coffee after 4
Yeah.
because I enjoy brewing coffee.
Hmm.
I also think some of these habits really help you in your mind, right? Like I had this old mocha pot at home, which I bought years ago, and pandemic, I'm like I could order coffee, but I didn't want to just use the machine. So I think this is a ritual, right? I think building rituals we don't realize have such great importance for the mind.
Yeah.
Like I have a ritual with my daughter, but we say hello to the world every morning together.
How sweet.
I have a ritual with I call it I start my day being shown my place because I clean pee and poop as soon as I wake up every morning. So like world is shown my place. This is the ground zero where you start.
This is like Caesar having a
Yeah.
person whisper, "You're going to die. You're going to die."
Yeah, it's like I think there's memento mori, and this is like literally, I don't know what this is. Like, what is the P equivalent of that? So I start my day with that. But just the process of me taking that mocha pot and brewing it every day, trying different blends, it became a thing for me. 2020 especially. Now that's progressed to like an espresso machine, and again figuring that whole temperature piece and all that. But there's a beauty to some of these rituals.
Yeah.
And the more of those you build into your day, not just with yourself, but with people close to you, it's just a lot of fun.
So in fact, in our habit world, so the way that I've structured it is that habits are the actions or the thoughts that you do every day.
Yeah,
Habits strung together become routines.
correct.
Okay. Routines plus emotions become rituals.
So true, actually.
Right, so it's that emotion about that little feeling, that clunk of the espresso when
Yeah.
you turn it in, the
So satisfying.
so satisfying, and you start immediately having feelings associated with it, right? If you don't get that espresso in the morning, today's going to be a bad day,
Yeah.
right? All those are part of our rituals, and they're essential for our mental well-being.
It's also, if you think about it, so I'm a person who talks about poop way too much for my own good.
You should
I've
go
been
trekking.
told. No, I just enjoy talk. It's like poop humor, everything around. I'm obsessed with my own like poop cycles. So I always say that if I don't have a good, I call it a good download. If I don't have a good download in the morning, my day goes bad. And it's true because I feel emotionally you want that cleanse. And it's like, I don't know if you can call it a ritual, but it has to be a ritual because you can't just like, we ignore that part a lot. I
Yeah,
feel,
yeah.
at least many people do.
No, in India, though, it's still very set. When you go to the West, it's like today happened, God knows, day after tomorrow we'll see. But out here, that
Don't even get me
morning-
started about toilet paper versus the health faucet. I have like so many issues. I've actually found a portable bidet which I carry with me when I go abroad. Which is weird plastic contraption. Which is a pipe coming out. You can kind of it sprays water in. And now I found an electronic one which I haven't bought. Yeah. So my obsessive nature is gone
Next,
far
you get
beyond.
one of those Japanese toilet seats for travel,
Which talks to you also.
which talks to you. How are you having? a
Are
good
you
day?
done?
All right, so this was a fantastic conversation on understanding mental fitness and eventually getting to happiness. Now, there is a second part to this podcast, so make sure you listen to that. Enjoy.